Now, whether you read it as a child or a parent or even a grandparent, I suspect many of you may be familiar with Margaret Wise Brown's classic, The Runaway Bunny. And in that story, we see a little bunny who wishes to run away from home. And every time that he does so, he comes up with a plan, something he's going to turn into that will let him escape. But each time, his mother finds something that she can be to help bring her little bunny back home. First, we see the bunny saying he'll turn into a fish. But then his mother turns into a fisher to fish him out of the sea. Then the bunny turns into a rock. Then his mother becomes a climber to climb that rock. We see the bunny becoming a flower, and his mother becoming a garden, to be in that garden, to tend to him as this flower. We see the bunny becoming a little bird, and his mother then becoming a tree for that bird to come home to. The bunny then becomes a sailboat. The mother, the wind, to blow his sails, help guide him on his journey. We even see this little bunny running away to the circus, where this bunny becomes a trapeze artist, finds his mother becoming a tightrope walker to look after him. And finally, the bunny becomes a little boy. And the mother becomes this little boy's mother to welcome him back with open arms. And finally, at this point, the bunny gives up running away. So now, hearing this story of the runaway bunny, you can now understand our story from Genesis this morning. Last week, we saw Jacob, who we see here again today. We learned that Jacob is a trickster and a scoundrel. And he tricked his own twin brother out of his inheritance and then out of his blessing as the firstborn of these two twins. Now, while Jacob is clearly the clever one of the two, his twin brother Esau is much stronger than Jacob is. And so Jacob, out of fear for his own life, flees after doing all these things wrong to his own brother. Now, in Jacob's day and age, the thought, the belief, was that different gods, different deities were tied to the land. So when Jacob is leaving his father's house, he would have also thought that he was leaving God behind as well. Instead, Jacob, in a dream, experiences this ladder descending from heaven, with all the angels and messengers of God going up and down it. And in this dream, he finds God right there beside him. And here is God, the God of his father Isaac, the God of his grandfather Abraham, telling Jacob too that he is now being added to this list, with whom God has this covenant, this promise for the future. So when we hear Jacob say, how awesome is this place, what we're actually probably hearing Jacob say is something closer to, oh man, or oh sugar, or oh whatever words you want to add in there. Because he's probably really scared and afraid, because he just found out that that God that he thought he had escaped from didn't so much work out that he did escape. God is still there. That God is there no matter where it is that Jacob goes. Jacob thought he could escape from God, just like the runaway bunny thought he could escape from his mother. He could not. That's because God isn't tied to the land. God was everywhere. God is everywhere. But we try to escape, just like the runaway bunny's mother. God will find a way to be there for us. Now, our psalm this morning shows us this too. It is such a beautiful response to this reading, because it reflects this idea of God's presence. It reflects this idea that God is everywhere. As this Psalm of David reminds us, where can I go then from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I climb up to heaven, you are there. If I make the grave my bed, you are there also. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand hold me fast. Even if we are not tricksters like Jacob, the presence of God can be really scary, because it's something we can't escape. Yet there's also reason for hope in God's eternal presence with us. And this is the hope that we receive in the parable Jesus gives, the parable of the wheat and the weeds. This parable is a promise that God will be there with us, even in the midst of evil, and even in the midst of the worst that life has to offer. This parable itself is really the answer to one of those big questions of life. It's Jesus giving us that answer, the answer to the question of why do bad things happen to good people? Though we might want to be careful in adding that qualifier good to ourselves and our own lives. But the answer that this parable gives is really a simple one. We don't know what's going on with the enemy. We don't know how or when the enemy came in to sow these weeds among the wheat. But what we do know is this, that in the end, good will ultimately triumph. God will ultimately triumph. And that victory only comes because of God's continued presence in our lives. This is the lesson of our reading in Genesis today, of God's continued presence. It's the story of Jacob's ladder and what it really means. This lesson is also what we see reflected in our Psalms response to that very same greeting. It's what we see reflected in the story of the runaway bunny as well. No matter where we are or what we do, God is still there with us always. My hope is that you'll find yourself on the side of the wheat in Jesus' parable. Find yourself on that side and rejoice in that continued presence of God. Rejoice in what it means for all of us. At the very least, I hope that you can be like Jacob the scoundrel. At least find ourselves honoring and revering the holiness of these places where we come to realize there is no running away from, no escaping from our Lord